For nearly 2 decades, the Super Mario 64 community hunted for something that was impossible. On Tiny Huge Island, a single coin sat trapped inside a wall. You could spot it with camera hacks, but you could never reach it, and it was called Impossible Coin. But it was only impossible till 2014, when a player finally used a series of frame-perfect glitches to snatch it. People thought the mystery was solved, until they realized that there was a second coin buried deep underground. This one is even more spiteful. It was doomed. The game code runs a brutal failsafe. When a coin touches the floor, the game deletes it instantly. It is a harsh reminder that even in a masterpiece like Mario 64, there are strange broken things hiding just beneath the floorboards. In the classic 2D days, Goombas were normal walking punchbags, but when the series jumped to 3D in Super Mario 64, they got a nasty upgrade, aggressively hunting you down the second you get close. Yet the most bizarre Goomba in the entire game is the one you can't even reach. The mysterious Goomba. Tucked away in the final level, Bowser in the Sky, this guy is hidden behind a wall, and you won't see him in a normal playthrough. The reason is a classic coding oversight. In Mario 64, Goombas are programmed to spawn in groups of 3. However, the platform at the end of the level is too small to hold all of them. The game didn't care, and it forced the third Goomba to spawn anyway, shoving it deep into the void behind the level's geometry. It's been trapped back there for decades, a victim of the game's code. Those balls match the shape and size of King Bob-omb perfectly, and the theory around it is grim. They are the bodies of the bosses you have already crushed, and they aren't just rocks. Nintendo never explained why the third one appears. It just shows up. You spend a good amount of time in the castle basement chasing Mips, that quick golden rabbit that rewards you with stars, and most players consider him a fun side challenge, but his name is a massive hint about what is actually under the hood of your console. MIPS stands for Microprocessor Without Interlocked Pipelined Stages, which is the exact architecture that powers the Nintendo 64 CPU. In the backyard of Peach's castle, there is a stone fountain with a star statue. At the base of the statue is a tiny, incredibly pixelated flag. If you stare at it long enough, the blurry text looks like it says, L is real, 2401. And kids on early internet forums completely lost it. Everyone assumed L stood for Luigi. And the 2401 part spun off insane theories. Players thought it meant you had to collect 2,401 coins or run around the fountain 2,401 times to unlock him. People wasted hundreds of hours trying. Then Nintendo eventually revealed that the plaque was just another generic texture art. It was used in other games too, like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time inside Dodongo's cavern. It didn't mean anything, but here is the craziest part. In 2020, 24 years later after the game came out, a massive Nintendo source code leak happened. Fans dug through the leaked Super Mario 64 development files and found a discarded 3D model for Luigi. He actually was real. The developers wanted him in the game for a split-screen co-op mode, but they had to cut him because of N64 memory limitations. But the ultimate coincidence? The date of that massive leak was July the 24th of 2020, 7-24. If you add up the digits of the year 2020, you get 4. Put it together, and the date of the leak reads exactly 2401. In Super Mario 64 DS, the title screen usually cycles back and forth between 2 hand-drawn sketches. You get Mario, then you get Yoshi. But most players just press start and completely miss the hidden layer. If you actually sit there and let the screen alternate between Mario and Yoshi 3 full times, a hidden sketch of Luigi finally pops up on the 4th cycle. It feels like a massive nod from the developers. After a decade of losing their minds over the L is real 2401 rumor in the original N64 version, Luigi finally made it into the castle for the remake, and you can only find him by doing absolutely nothing at the start screen. Everyone knows that a flying Lakitu follows you around in Mario 64 to act as your cameraman, but since he is always behind you, you almost never actually see him during gameplay, except for one specific room. On the second floor of Peach's castle, there is a room with a massive mirror covering the black wall. If you walk up to it, the game flips the perspective. For the first time, you can see the reflection of the Lakitu floating directly behind Mario. He is riding his cloud, holding a massive broadcast camera attached to a fishing pole. It is a genius way the developers visualize the brand new 3D camera controls. Speaking of hiding in plain sight, let's talk about the Hoot of the Owl. You can find him sleeping inside trees in levels like Whomp's Fortress and Tall Mountain. If you wake him up, you can grab onto his legs and use him like a temporary helicopter to fly to high platforms. But Hoot has a limit. If you hold on to him for too long, he gets completely exhausted and drops you. But before he drops you, a text box pops up where the owl straight up body shames Nintendo's mascot. The text reads, "Phew, I'm just about flapped out. You should lay off the pasta, Mario." Hoot would also tell you to like and subscribe because it goes a long way. The skybox in Wet Dry World is easily the most unsettling image in the entire game. It looks like a flooded post-apocalyptic ghost town frozen in time. Most players think it's a surreal, randomly generated piece of digital art, but it is real. The developers took actual real-world photographs and heavily distorted them to fit the level's creepy vibe. The unique high-rise mud brick buildings you see in the background are photographs of Shiban, an ancient city located in Yemen. The other architectural structures hidden in the haze belong to the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, located all the way over in Cairo, Egypt. The team stitched these two real locations together, desaturated the colors, and wrapped them around the level to create a sun-bleached liminal space. So when you are swimming around that level, you are actually trapped inside a distorted collage of real-world history. Haze Maze Cave contains one of the most stressful hazards in the entire game, a toxic yellow gas filling the lower caverns. When you step into it, a coughing animation triggers, and Mario's health wheel immediately begins to plummet. But behind the scenes, the gas isn't actually poisonous at all. Rather, they recycled the same mechanic used when Mario swims. The game treats the yellow mist precisely like water. The moment you enter the cavern, the game tells the engine that Mario is technically submerged. His health wheel isn't draining from poison, but the game is slowly running down his oxygen meter at the exact same rate as if he were holding his breath underwater. You are essentially drowning on dry land. Everyone remembers the infamous penguin mission in Cool Mountain. You find a crying baby penguin at the very top of the mountain, carry it all the way down the icy slides, and return it to its massive mother at the bottom to earn a power star. Most players usually grab the star and leave, but the developers actually programmed a specific reaction if you decided to be a jerk. If you try to pick that baby penguin back up after you've already reunited the family, the mother penguin completely snaps. An angry expression triggers, and she will actively chase Mario around the ice, aggressively waddling after you until you drop her kid. Millions of kids discovered this back in the 90s, but usually only because they were trying to throw the baby off the ledge or off the cliff. Everyone recognizes Boo's unsettling laugh the second they hear it. As you enter the courtyard or step inside Big Boo's haunt, that high-pitched crackle immediately sets a creepy tone. It sounds completely unique, but it is actually a total illusion. It belongs to Bowser. To save precious memory on the N64 cartridge, the audio team could not simply upload infinite sound files, so they took Bowser's deep roaring growl and heavily modified it. By drastically speeding up the playback audio, the deep bass of Bowser's voice was compressed into a fast, high-pitched crackle. Sometimes, the game just doesn't know how to handle what you're doing. Take the double hat glitch. It's a classic case of the game's logic snapping under pressure when you pick up two hats in a single rapid motion. Instead of crashing or throwing an error, the game takes the coward's way out. It forces Mario to wear one hat while clutching the second one in his right hand. You can test this in Snowman's Land. Let the giant snowman blow your hat off, then immediately jump into the warp under the tree. The game gets confused and duplicates the item. If you grab both hats the second you land, you'll find yourself running through the snow with a spare hat permanently clutched in your fist. It is surreal, useless, and completely unintended. Hidden deep in the code of Super Mario 64, There is a ghost of a feature that would have changed everything. Buried in the files, developers found an unused animated texture for a Yoshi egg. We all know Yoshi eventually makes a quick, lonely cameo on the castle roof, but that egg tells a different story. It is clear the team was testing Yoshi as a rideable companion, a core tool meant to help Mario navigate the 3D world. It makes sense given how much he helped in the 2D era, but for reasons we can only guess, the feature was scrapped. That lonely egg in the data is the only remaining proof that Nintendo almost turned Mario's first 3D adventure into a duo journey. Yoshi was supposed to be here with you, but he ended up cut from the game. We've talked about Yoshi's cut companion role, but the most glaring absence in the Mushroom Kingdom is the one we've been waiting for since day one. Luigi. He didn't just vanish by accident. Nintendo actively experimented with a two-player 3D experience. As early as 1996, Shigeru Miyamoto described test builds where both brothers roamed the same 3D room, running through internal experiments to see if the game engine could handle the dynamic. They wanted that iconic duo dynamic to make the jump to 3D. Ultimately, it wasn't a lack of interest that killed the idea, it was the tech. The team couldn't get the multiplayer experience to feel right, so they pulled the plug, leaving Luigi on the sidelines while Mario went solo. Bob-omb Battlefield serves as the true face of the franchise. You see it everywhere. It features the Minecraft Mario crossover, fuels the travel montage in the Super Mario movie, appears as a sleek brochure in Super Mario Odyssey, and greets parkgoers as a lenticular image at Super Nintendo World. Nintendo constantly pulls us back into this specific mountain. It marks the exact moment Mario broke into 3D. Whomp's Fortress stands as one of the most memorable heights in Mario 64. Its design was so iconic that Nintendo brought it back years later. In Super Mario Galaxy 2, the level reappeared as the Throwback Galaxy. The developers borrowed the layout and they faithfully recreated the entire fortress, letting a new generation of players climb the same vertical gauntlet that defined the N64 era. The music in Jolly Roger Bay hides a clever trick. The track adapts to your environment in real time. Swim beneath the surface, and the game layers in a soft synth melody to match the underwater mood. Break the surface for air, and those synths cut out, replaced by a steady drum beat. It keeps the atmosphere shifting without you ever stopping to notice the transition. Tick-Tock Clock stands apart from every other stage in the game. You're trapped inside the literal gears and levers of a functioning machine. The level behaves like a living puzzle, and its internal speed changes based on the positions of the minute hand when you leap through the portal. Watch that minute hand before you jump. Its position dictates the chaos you'll face. At 12, the machine freezes. Everything stands perfectly still. At 3, the gears crawl. This is your slow motion setting. At 6, the gears act unpredictably. They shift speed and direction at random, keeping you on your toes. At 9, the gears spin at top speed. This is pure chaos. If you grind your way to all 120 stars, you might think that the game is over. Most people just walk away, but there is one final reward hidden in the defeat of Bowser in the sky. Head back for a rematch and take him down one more time. You won't get the standard "you have beaten me" speech. Instead, Bowser cracks. He starts ranting about how worthless his troops are and questions his own incompetence. The dialogue reveals something huge. Bowser had no idea the castle's secret stars even existed. He occupied the entire building, threw the princess into a painting, and still somehow managed to miss the treasure hidden right under his nose. He's a tyrant, realizing he failed because he was too oblivious to see the full extent of what he was trying to conquer. The Super Mario 64 credit sequence stands as a landmark in gaming history, anchored by one of the most memorable soundtracks ever written. But you don't have to watch it as a passive observer. Plug in a second controller before the screen rolls. With that controller active, you gain control over the camera. You are directing the final shot. You lose the complete 360-degree freedom of standard gameplay, but you can pan the lens, shift your perspective, and choose exactly what you want to see. If you are bored of a static shot of Mario and his friends, swivel the camera to focus on the castle's architecture, or frame the screen from a different angle. You turn a standard ending into your own personal film production. Early in the game, the giant penguin in the lodge challenges you to a race down the slide. Win, and you take his power star. But the real surprise comes much later. Return to that lodge after you've collected all 120 stars. The penguin is still there, but he looks different. He's twice as wide, and before he admits he's let himself go and hasn't practiced in years, you might think his size makes him a pushover, but you'd be wrong. He carries every bit of that new mass into the race. Even a slight brush against his oversized frame will send you careening off the track, muscling you straight into the abyss. He's retired, out of shape, and more dangerous than he's ever been. If you spent your childhood obsessed with the inner mechanics of Super Mario 64, you likely owned a Game Shark. It was more than just a way to cheat. It was a key to the game's actual engineering. Using specific codes, you can unlock 2 hidden debug displays that reveal exactly how the engine handles Mario's momentum and object physics. Enter the code A032D5980059, and the game strips away the polish. The screen fills with live data, tracking memory usage and the exact numerical values for Mario's speed and trajectory. It turns the gameplay into a grid of math. For those wanting a deeper dive, more complex codes exist that pull back the veil on the engine's architecture. These menus map out every background asset, object, and layout coordinate loaded in the console's memory. It's a look at the skeleton of the Mushroom Kingdom, a raw, unvarnished view of the logic that kept the revolution running. Early in development, horses were planned for Super Mario 64. Nintendo toyed with the idea of making Mario a rider, but the mechanic never left the testing phase. It feels bizarre to imagine Mario galloping across the fields of Bob-omb Battlefield, but this scrapped concept served a greater purpose. The experiments acted as a technical springboard for the team, eventually leading to the creation and implementation of Epona in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. While Mario never got his steed, he helped pave the way for Link to gallop across Hyrule. Super Mario 64 dominated and defined the Nintendo 64, with approximately 11.91 million units sold worldwide. It stands as the undisputed best-selling game for the console. It can strongly compete with the decorated library of the PlayStation, undoubtedly the best console in that generation. Regardless of the exact leaderboard placement, Super Mario 64 remains one of the most successful and influential titles of that era. The influence of Super Mario 64 extends far beyond its record-breaking sales. In January of 2005, Electronic Gaming Monthly crowned it the most important video game ever made. Critics and developers alike recognized that the game provided the essential blueprint for 3D movement, camera control, and environmental design. It set the standard that every title following in its wake had to match. The game's influence led to many copycats: Gex Enter the Gecko, Spyro, Ratchet & Clank, and even the infamous Bubsy 3D. They all chased the 3D platforming craze, yet some of the most profound lessons from the game appeared in places you would never expect. Take GoldenEye 007. On the surface, a gritty Bond shooter has nothing in common with a plumber jumping on mushrooms. But look at the structure. In GoldenEye, you must complete specific objectives before reaching the exit. The developers lifted this design directly from Super Mario 64. They realized that locking the exit behind tasks forced the players to stop sprinting and start solving. It turned linear levels into dense puzzles. The success of the game also changed how companies looked at their own mascots. Squaresoft watched Mario dominate the market and realized they needed a hero with equal cultural weight. They hit a wall, eventually concluding that no original character could match the plumber's reach. They needed a partner with global recognition. That search for an equal icon led them straight to Disney, the spark that finally created Kingdom Hearts. Super Mario 64 was a titan, but Shigeru Miyamoto wasn't satisfied. He believed the finished game utilized only 60% of the Nintendo 64's true potential. He pushed for a sequel, aiming for a 1998 release, It promised everything the original lacked: a playable Luigi, a rideable Yoshi, and a 4-player mode. Since it would have run on the existing engine, development was slated for a fast turnaround. The project hit a wall because of the hardware. Nintendo planned to release it on the 64DD, the ill-fated disc peripheral on the N64. When the 64DD flopped in Japan, the sequel died with it. Only one level was ever built, and that remains hidden away, never released to the public. While the game vanished, the developers salvaged the core concepts, folding the mechanics and design ideas into Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. We never got the direct sequel we were promised, but we did get it in spirit in the next Mario games. It is hard to believe Super Mario 64 exists at all when you look at the conditions behind its creation. The core team consisted of only 15 people. For context, nearly everyone at Nintendo eventually touched Ocarina of Time, but this small group carried the entire weight of a franchise transition on their own. They had to invent the rules for 3D navigation on hardware that was still being finalized. It was not as simple as making a game. The physical tools were just as brutal. The team spent the first 6 months without the actual console controller. They had perfected Mario's movement using keyboards and modified Sega pads, guessing how an analog stick would eventually feel. When the N64 controller finally arrived, it went through over 100 iterations before it felt right. Memory limitations and constant frantic pivots pushed the release date back by a full year, a delay that became a permanent fixture of Nintendo's culture. Giles Goddard, one of the lead programmers, later admitted the team lived in a state of constant panic. 2 developers were so burnt out by the sheer intensity of the project that they quit the industry entirely. So basically, Super Mario 64 actually ended 2 careers. Game engines often struggle when numbers cross specific thresholds, and the Japanese release of Super Mario 64 hides one of the industry's most famous examples. The coin counter usually caps at 999, but if you manage to push it to 1000, typically by farming coins from Bowser's fireballs, you break the game's internal logic. The life counter on your HUD shifts to read M25. It flips the game's entire death and respawn rule set. Fall off the stage. Rather than losing a life, your counter increases towards 0, effectively granting you a life. The official history of Super Mario 64 is relatively tidy, spanning 4 primary Nintendo consoles. But the unofficial history, that is a sprawling, chaotic, and brilliant endeavor because of the internet. Around 2018, a group of dedicated programmers and speedrunners began the massive task of fully decompiling the game's source code. They wanted to understand it. After roughly 2 years of volunteer work, they achieved a full match. By turning the game's binary data into readable C code, they effectively unlocked the ability to rebuild Super Mario 64 for any piece of hardware powerful enough to run it. This breakthrough became the foundation of the entire modern N64 decompilation scene. It provided the tools and community knowledge that would eventually allow fans to port other classics like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. While Nintendo keeps its official releases limited, the fan community has turned Super Mario 64 into a nomad. Thanks to these decompilation efforts, you can now find the game running natively on platforms ranging from the Nintendo 3DS, PlayStation Vita, and Sega Dreamcast to the PlayStation 2 and even Android devices. But if you want to go back in time and live some nostalgia, you need to check out our video on Super Mario Bros.